Hi, uh, I am Bob Davis, as I introduced myself before, and I imagine the last song wasn't exactly the song you were expecting in the Preschool Buddhism service. To be honest with you, I wasn't expecting it either. The guy who sings the song is a comedian named Bo Burnham, and it's from his special Inside, which he recorded entirely by himself during the lockdown, and I personally think it's genius. And I would like to avoid the trap of over explaining and killing the joke, but because of copyright stuff, there's a high probability that the song will be cut from the uploaded version of the service, so I'll try to explain enough. The gist of the song is somehow, if you explicitly and plainly state the reality of life that causes our existential dread, you somehow end up with a funny feeling. But somehow, even though it's funny, it's still incredibly depressing. It's like both things at once, and neither at the same time. It's a contradiction that is easy to state, but perhaps really difficult to comprehend. Like as difficult as like the Buddhist idea that if a person works to understand themselves, they will eventually realize that there is no self and they don't exist. And there is no self. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, or whatever that means. When I got tapped to do this sermon, I said yes because Carrie and Sam asked me, and you do not say no to those people. So I spent a very long time trying to think about what I could even begin to contribute to the service. I am very far from having my stuff figured out, and I eventually figured that I've been teaching professionally for the majority of my life, and that was probably the safest to talk about that. I worked out a talk on how to teach young kids to navigate conflict, but it just ended up sounding more like a TED talk than a church talk. And for my dear, shrewd Unitarian Universalist brethren, there is in fact a difference between a TED talk and a sermon. At least I like to think there should be. Anyways, I eventually found out my talk was missing that spiritual element. The work I do with preschoolers shares a lot of the same thought processes as a Buddhist practiced. I have had some introduction to Buddhist ideas and how meditation works through some personal therapy I've had, and I've played with the idea of giving a talk on Buddhism preschool, to the point where when the deadline hit for the name of the sermon, that was the direction I was going to go. But I hit a big stumbling block. Now, I don't know if you all know about this, but people like me, white men, we have this weird habit of appropriating other people's cultures and even religions, and we sometimes speak for others that we have no right speaking for, and the accusation has been leveled that we maybe sometimes, absolutely always, see ideas we have formulated or adopted as supreme, making us the people with the answers, the ability to offer help and lay judgment on the behavior of others. If you would only understand our point, you would see that we are right. It quickly became apparent that any attempt to explain Buddhism was going to quickly devolve into a disingenuous, uninformed, splain town situation. And if I was going to lead a service where I presented new ideas that had any hope of being at all spiritual and genuine, all I really could do is offer my own experience. So, here's that. If you don't know, I teach 3-year-olds at the Early Education Co-op on the church campus. The co-op is a preschool that focuses on kids' social emotional development. They call my class, the 3-year-old class, the conflict class. It's where kids get to learn to share. Like, hey, share that teacup with me, or I will share this knuckle sandwich with you. It's great. But really, I love it. I thrive in conflict when I'm not in it. When a child gets angry, my brain can see the individual moving parts of the situation and help break it down. Before I started teaching 3-year-olds, I taught high schoolers at a Title I school. And there's a funny feeling in how teaching high schoolers requires the same conflict management as 3-year-olds. And I've often made the joke that I started teaching 3-year-olds because the only difference between them and high schoolers is a 3-year-old hook just can't quite dislodge teeth with the same intensity. But the joke is missing the truth. I actually prefer the rush and real drama of high-strung high school emotions. You can at least rationalize with high schoolers, like to some extent. I truly believe that kids hold the only hope for humanity. And that sounds cheesy. I kind of sound like Whitney Houston with like 1/16 the vocal range and none of the cool factor. But like I really do. So let me explain with a jarring segue. I have not handled the past year and a half very well. Oh, you've handled it great. You've been having a blast. Oh, well, cool for you. Yeah. Because after watching things like our governor use children's lives as capital in a political game of poker, I have basically lost all faith in humanity. What? That doesn't sound like a healthy perspective? Well, yeah, it's not a healthy perspective at all. And that's why you pay a therapist. Earlier in the service, I played a song that I wrote after finding myself having fully lost track of the days during COVID, lying splayed out on the living room floor after a bottle of wine and nothing else but an end of the world news cycle for weeks. Having this wonderful thing people call a panic attack. And my girlfriend turned to me and helped me get through that and said, "Be still." And I was able to write a little song and also said, "You probably should check in with your therapist." So I did the right smart thing and I checked in with my minister and my therapist and I assured them both that I was completely fine and I had everything together. And I think I remember Rev Christine's response to my confidence with, "Yeah, well, no one has it together, so there's that." Yeah. My therapist, who I swear is secretly trying to convert me to Taoism or something, keeps meeting my confident assertions about how I'm fine with gentle reminders to work on that breathing. And that I one time said I kind of remind of a thing in a book. And it's in a book called Why Buddhism is True. Now, I was eager to learn about this because everything he was teaching me about being aware of my own emotions, I already knew. I know how to cry, my dude. I'm a preschool teacher. I don't need to learn anything. Now, I want to explain this book to you because it did something in my brain and changed a perspective. Now, I'm not going to try to summarize Robert Wright's book, Why Buddhism is True. The book in and of itself is in part a sort of an attempt to summarize Buddhism and how it fits in with science, behavioral science understanding of consciousness. But I will tell you that you absolutely should read it. Or if you're like me, you can listen to the audiobook. Again, his name is Robert Wright. And the book is Why Buddhism is True. And I'll try to do my best to summarize what I was able to pull from the book. So, in meditation, the goal is sometimes to try and not think about anything, just to be present. If you were to try that right now, I wonder if we could be successful. Let's try. Take it. Well, my phone just rang, and I got a text, so I'm thinking about that. I'm not thinking about anything. It's a hard process, and you will screw up continuously. And if you've ever attended any type of meditation training with Katie or anyone else, you'll realize that that's a really hard thing to do. Now, Wright talks about his difficulties in the process and interviews people who are considered very experienced meditators. At one point, he talks about how experienced meditators talk about having the ability to focus on distraction and distractions like pain, like such as a toothache. And they can study that pain and through studying it, lessen the intensity or immediacy of the pain. They explain a feeling of the pain by being looked at the meditator is able to like disconnect it from themselves. They also describe how feelings can be surprising on how they feel when they're studied. A toothache, for example, may have the feeling of your cheek being hot as well as the root of the tooth with a sharp pain. There's two different feelings. You're hot on your cheek, your tooth is sharp in pain, your gums are sore, and all those are together one feeling but different. And see, I found this really fascinating because I experienced this with kids every day at my job. In my field, when discussing a child's feeling, we try to keep the words as literal and empty of value as possible. So like, for example, we wouldn't say a child is crying. That implies a value, an intent. We're saying you're upset. They may not be upset, and they don't know yet. So instead, what we do is we say things like, I see your eyebrows are furrowed or rolled up. Furrowed is even a word with value. You want to say very literal. I see your eyebrows are rolled and squished. I see your cheeks are pulled down. I see your foot hitting the floor. I see your fists are clenched. And I also see there's water coming out of your eyes. And you don't say crying. You say water. And there's this really, my favorite part of my job, beautiful moment that happens at least 12 to 15 times a year. There's a kid who goes, they touch their face. And they're surprised to find water. And they're surprised to find they don't know that they're crying, or they don't know that there's water coming out of their face. My favorite explanation one kid gave to me, he was a lot like me, a lot of denial. He said, "That's not tears. That's water from the refrigerator." He had logically gone back and realized that he drank water earlier that day. It went through his system and came out of his eye, but he was not crying at all. The kid's a genius. Also, going to have to do a lot of work on connecting those two feelings, and that's what I helped him with. But that's what I do with the little kids. And so with Buddhism, though, when the next step is, if you keep looking in that feeling of like tears, you can separate that feeling from who you are. You can say, I am sad. That sad, not I am sad. That sad feeling belongs to me, but I am not that feeling. It's a part of me, but it's not what I am. And so you do that with that. And then you do that maybe with like happiness. Like, I am overjoyed. Maybe I talk too much and I get really excited like I am right now, and I talk really fast, and then I want to slow down. And the way to slow down in meditation is you stop and you think about that happy feeling and you put that over here. And you say, that happiness is a part of me, but I am also other things. And you separate that and you say, I can feel my heart race when I get excited. I can feel my hands clench when I get excited. My mouth gets dry, my tongue moves fast and runs against the back of my teeth. All those feelings are there, and they're all separate parts. And I can separate and dissect and just remove, like a word is disassociate those feelings. And if you do that, according to Richard Wright's book and the research that he's done and the people he's met, there's a place where you keep putting this here, and this here, and this here, and this here. And eventually you start to question, well, where am I looking from? If all these things are over there, where am I? And if you do it for long enough, people who are very experienced claim that there is nowhere. You are nowhere. Because in fact, you do not necessarily exist like we think. And it's a contradiction. Because I am feeling all these things and I have to exist, but you're not. You are all of those things and nothing at once. And that's like the big, heavy feeling from Buddhism that is terrifying and existentially horrifying, but also liberating in a really weird way. Now, it doesn't absolve you from those awful feelings. Those awful things you said, those still belong to you. They may not be all that you are, but they are a part of you. So you can run the risk with Buddhism of being like, I'm not responsible for my feelings because nothing is me. And that's a dangerous place to go. And if you have a good meditation teacher, they'll put you back on track, hopefully. So for me and my experience. When I walked into therapy the first time, things were not great. That's usually how you get to therapy. And I walked in, I had my cowboy boots on, my jeans, nice shirt, and I was strong, and I was ready to work it out. And I walked in and I said, hey man, look, I am ready. I got it all figured out. I know I'm not feeling good. All I need to do is how to make that stop. And he looked at me, and I can only imagine what he saw. He saw not a very big guy, all elbows, kind of squirrely, long, stringy hair, poorly groomed face. Talking about being a big bad cowboy, and this contradiction. And I was lucky enough that he said, hey, you are that, but you're also that. And you're both of those things at once. And for like 4 years, that's basically all I've been working on, is being both of those things together and that contradiction. And feeling really stupid for not understanding that, but then realizing that that is also a bad feeling, and those all things come together. Anyways, how does this relate to the kids? I am bad at this. I am bad at being present. I can do all the things. I can be absent, but not present. And if we flash back to that moment on the floor, full panic attack, the world is ending, and currently still is, I'm not denying that it's not, freaking out. Rev Christine helped, my friends helped, therapy helped. One thing really helped. I was terrified of losing my job. How do you teach 3-year-olds when you can't touch them and see them? You can't. It goes against all the rules. And so we didn't know what to do, but we knew these kids needed connection, so we tried to Zoom with them. And I don't know if you've ever tried to Zoom with a 3-year-old. It's a wild ride. You are not in control. They are. So what we did is I just turned my camera on, and we had the parents put them in front of kids, and I said, don't tell the kids what to do, just put them up, and we'll do this thing. And I went and I just turned on Mr. Rogers, because I figured he knew what to do, right? And when you watch Mr. Rogers, he has these things, like I call them keystones, where he walks in every time, he sings the same song. He takes his shoes off, puts new shoes on. He puts a sweater on, and every sweater I learned that he put on was made by his mother, every one. But he always changes the sweater. And then he goes and he feeds this fish, because you got to feed the fish. And then he goes and checks in with the trolley. And other things happen. Sometimes the mailman comes, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he gets letters, sometimes he goes on a walk. But those things always happen. Then he leaves. And those things happen every time. And so I knew that that's what these kids needed, because they needed that. I needed to give this to these kids. And so I turned on my screen and I said, hey guys. And I picked up my guitar and I played a song every day. I colored a little bit with no goal. And then we checked in on my garden, and I showed that I just watered my plants for them, and they were very interested in that. And after the week, I said, you know what, I've got this. I'm giving these kids what they need. And then really, I realized I wasn't. See, kids get it. A kid can be a fireman in pretend play. A kid can be a dragon slayer. A kid can be a flight attendant or a pilot. A kid can also, in the next moment, be the baby in pretend play. They can be the mommy or the daddy taking care and making dinner. And they switch one, two, other in pretend play. And if you play with kids, it's all those things all together. And they switch. And what we don't see as a strength is they never have an identity crisis. Because as a 36-year-old man, if I were all of those things, that would immediately cause like full mental traction, and I would not know what to do. I can't be all of those things at once, and they have no problem being those things because they're each individually there. And that's a strength. And we could sit back and go, how amazing is that? But there's one thing they also see that I didn't see. They also know how to pretend to be every day. They pretend to live life. And pretending is a real thing. It's not pretending like it's fake. It's real. They like to pretend. They like to play the role of watering plants every day. They like to pretend and play the role of singing together. They like to pretend and play the role of giving a hug. It's what you do. They understand the steps. My garden's a very important thing because I have a very close friend. Many of you know them. It's Katie's wife, Len. Len came to my house when I was in a really bad place. And couldn't get my paperwork together. Everything was all. And she was sitting on my porch like Len does, not saying anything. And then she looked at my garden. She said, "Hey, Bob, your garden looks really good. It's a 4x4 square box." I was like, "Thanks." She's like, "Yeah, your mental health must be doing nice. That's the surest sign." And it was a weird correlation, and it made me cry because it was right. The ability to wake up and water a plant every day is a big job. And it's as big as being the fireman. It's as big as being a pilot. It's as big as all those things. And that's what kids see, and that's what Len saw, and that's what Buddha sees, is that all of those things are of equal value. And when we step back, it looks like kids get it because it's almost more important to feed yourself. But all of those things are separate but equal. And so I hope that I haven't made a point. I hope that I haven't, because I was raised in the Christian culture of giving a sermon, and here's the point, and go home, and here's your moral judgment, and here's what you're going to do, and you're going to be a better person if you follow these things. I hope you leave very confused, because as I've learned, that's actually a real skill, is being totally confused. And if I've done that for you, I hope so. But I do know one thing to do. I'll teach you something my kids taught me. At the end of every week, we do one thing, and it's called dance time. And they don't want to sing. They don't want to get together. They just want to get up, and they want to dance like a bunch of wild animals to the same 5 songs every week, all year long. Like a song like Johnny Be Good, I've played probably in the upwards of like 20,000 times, to the point that I hated it, and then I loved it again. So I'm going to play a song for you. It's by Sturgill Simpson. You can sing along. I think someone might put the lyrics in the chat. If you don't want to sing along, absolutely fine. If you want to get up and dance, I think my preschoolers would tell you, they would tell you that's what you're supposed to do. So if you want to get up and dance like a complete insane person, lose control of yourself, if you want to sit and listen to the words, they're kind of deep and cool. Whatever you choose, you do that. I'm going to get ready here, and we'll just play this live together. So it's kind of, I don't know, what do you sing together in? A hymn. It's kind of like hymn. So it's a hymn, dance, but let's get together. And I know I can see all of your screens right now in your houses. I'm just joking. I can't see you. So just go ahead and dance. Don't let me down, though. I want to see you dancing if you got it. All right, here we go. Through all these trials and sorrow, all these days of mortal sin, through all these eternal nights, no tomorrow, gotta stay on the straight and narrow, find a little light within. Gotta walk that road all the way to heaven. Gotta walk that road until the dawn. Gotta walk that road all night. All you need is a little light, and the closer you get along, the brighter it turns on. Gotta walk that road all the way to heaven. Gotta walk that road until the dawn. Gotta walk that road all night. All you need is a little light, and the closer you get, the brighter it turns on. Don't need no compass, no map or chart. Don't need no stars shining above. I don't need nothing but a little light in my heart, flowing inside me like a blanket of love. Gotta walk that road all the way to heaven. Gotta walk that road until the dawn. Gotta walk that road all night. All you need is a little light, and the closer you get, Lord, the brighter it turns on. They said the closer you get, Lord, the brighter it'll turn on. I hope you were dancing and not just staring at me awkwardly. And if you are, I hope you were laughing, and I hope it struck a weird, funny feeling in you. Thank you all for sharing that really weird journey with me.